this morning's news that my good friend and sister in Christ, Melissa Atkinson, posted on her Senate page. Melissa is running for Ohio State Senate for U.S. Senate, and she posted on her page, and it's perfect because it's exactly where we're at right now. And today we're gonna look at the gender deception. You know, last week we destroyed the lie, the deception of same-sex attraction, because there is no such thing as same-sex attraction. It is a misidentified desire for intimacy. And so I'm gonna see if I can get this news clip up that Melissa posted on her page, as I also get us up and running live on the website. This is some good stuff. We're going to look at some definition. We looked at most of these definitions before. However, we're going to look at some other definitions because somebody asked me a question yesterday and I covered it. I actually covered the whole intersex hermaphrodite deception Tuesday evening when I was speaking at Jeff Klein's car lot. Thank you again. My goodness, this week has been just amazing with the people and the connecting with people. So let me see if I can pull this up. I wanted to share. Now, you're not going to get the audio. You may slightly hear it, but it's not about the audio. Okay. It's about the visual. This was on the news this morning. See, they're trying to kick off something like vote day or something. Vote out kickoff. Vote. They have beer and men dressed as women. That kicks off your get out and vote day. Now, for those of you who can't hear it, let me say this. He uses foul language, very foul language. And as you can see, his pantyhose were falling down and his crotch was exposed on the local news. It was so detestable that the station itself had to actually cut. Oh, see, the station apologized for the language. Oh man, I tell you what, that's exactly where we are at. That's where we are. If you want to get out and vote for something positive, come have beer and see men dressed as women. See their crotches exposed and listen to their foul language. Gotta love the world. Lord have mercy. So that really kind of like coincides with what I wanted to discuss this morning. And what I want to discuss, I always try to figure out, there we go. I'm always trying to figure out how to do different things. I do them all the time and then I forget. All right. Well, look, we're going to look at just a few definitions first, some images, and then we're going to look at some more definitions. And this is exactly, okay, listen, everything that we're going to cover is being taught in the public school system. Everything that we are covering this morning is being taught in the public school system from elementary all the way up. Okay, this is what's being taught. So first we're going to look at a few definitions. So intersex. So somebody asked me, what is intersex, David? A lie? Here's your simplest answer. It's a lie. The definition says intersex people are born with sex characteristics. Now pay attention to the wording, including genitals, gonads, and chromosome patterns that do not fit typical binary notions of male or female bodies. You know what they just did? They just told you that there's more than male or female in creating the definition for intersex without anyone asking how they get to the point where there's something outside of male or female. They just automatically assumed there's something more than male or female. People who are intersex are born with sex characteristics. Your sex organ, your genitals are not, that doesn't determine your gender. Your DNA determines your gender, which then in turn determines your genitals. So this is the big lie. This is what they're teaching. That's why there's so many kids running around here that are so confused. And the more confused they get, the more broken they get. The more broken they get, the more depressed they get. One of the biggest lies, and I actually spoke at a congregation this weekend that now has painful physical proof that this is a lie. One of the biggest lies that come from the LGBT movement is, but the suicide rate of the LGBT youth, it's so high. Well, first of all, let's try comparing the suicide rate of the LGBT youth with the suicide rate of the Christian youth. Let's try doing that for a minute. Right. But more importantly, excuse me, I think it's allergies. I'm not used to all this warm weather coming from Maine. But let's look at the LGBT youth. Let's look at the LGBT suicide rate in general. In general, okay? So the lie is that the suicide rate will go down with acceptance. The deception is that the suicide rate does go down with acceptance, but only for a short period of time. You see, once they receive this acceptance, they get filled with this euphoric temporary joy. and they find themselves ecstatic, and they relish in this new acceptance, this new emotional state that they don't know, and they relish in it. And they actually believe that they have found the answer, that they have found some joy and some happiness. And then little by little and piece by piece, they are enveloped back by their own darkness as they start to realize that they're still the same person they were before the acceptance, and they're still as broken as they were before the acceptance. And then that darkness returns, and the deception and the depression, and then the suicide rate skyrockets. Like I said, I spoke at a congregation this weekend. They know this all too well. I hugged on a wonderful woman that I love so much, whose grandson took his life last week. They know from firsthand experience that with acceptance does not come joy and happiness. With acceptance comes more confusion, more bitterness, more brokenness, and it comes in time. But see, then what they do, they, meaning the system, the dark political mass that is the movement itself, then what they do, like the CDC and all the statistics and polls, then what they do is they take them. See, then they no longer are part of the LGBT statistics. Then they take those individuals that do take their lives when the suicide rate skyrockets, and they place them in other categories. In other categories, like just depression or just anxiety, just bipolar, just this, just that. But they remove them from the LGBT category, which makes it look like the LGBT category suicide rate goes down. I don't know how many of you have ever heard me talk about one of the many times that the Lord supernaturally intervened in my life while I was yet a sinner. You know, he loved me enough to reach out to me while I was yet deceived. Why? Because he loved me just where I was. He didn't love me just the way I was, but he loved me just where I was, right where I was. So I remember I was sitting on a blanket on Coney Island, New York. And I'm sitting on the blanket. I went to New York because I was getting some silicone work done. And I was also about 2 to 3 weeks away from getting my first surgical procedure. I was going to get castrated. And I'm sitting on this blanket with these transgenders who had already had the sexual reassignment surgery. And we're laughing and talking, and we're just having a good old time, right? All of a sudden, both of them get very, very serious. And they say, and the one looks at me and says, "Don't do it." And I didn't know what he was even referring to. I was like, "What do you mean?" And he says, and I say he because God created him a he, so he's a he. No matter if he went and made his outie and innie and got sexual reassignment surgery or not, he's still a he. So he looks at me and he says, "All of my life, I thought that I would find joy and happiness and peace if I could just become a woman. And he said, now that I'm legally and medically a woman, I'm more miserable now than I'd ever been. He said, I think about taking my life every day. The other one looked at me and says, I think about taking my life several times a day, every day. Don't do it. So, mind you, I didn't go get any surgical procedures done. Not from a medical doctor, anyway. I mean, I had some silicone stuff done, but that was by people I knew. We used to do it like in the kitchen. Um, so the point is that each of them thought they would find this joy, this happiness, this peace, this love, if they could just become female. They had sexual reassignment surgery and realized that they'd never be a female because that surgery didn't change their DNA. So that's what we see so many times when people they receive this acceptance and they think, wow, I got acceptance. I'm not depressed anymore. I'm not sad. I'm not hurting. I'm not broken anymore. And then in time, the floodgates open and they're overwhelmed. They're overwhelmed with the very fact that they are still confused, deceived, depressed, broken. So the lie is that with acceptance, the suicide rate goes down. And we're going to look at another um, we're going to look at another definition. Sorry. Oh, and let me explain something real quick. So a lot of people ask me about hermaphrodites. And so what they liken this term, this new term, intersex, they liken that to um, hermaphrodites also. Never in history, never in history, ever, never has a hermaphrodite been born with two total, complete, functionable sex organs. It's either one or the other. Never has one been born with male and female, complete, total, functioning sex organs. And if you want to know which organ works and is total, complete, and functioning, all you have to do is a DNA test. That's it. You do a DNA test, it says male, so you know that the female organ on this hermaphrodite is not complete, total, or functionable. That's the truth. And there's a lot of deception out there. But just because you read it or you hear it, don't mean it's true. Because I've had a whole lot of people tell me they were hermaphrodites and they had male and female organs and they both worked and they were going to impregnate themselves and all these lies and deception. See, the worst part about this movement is you don't live a lie, you become the lie. See, I didn't just live a lie, I became the lie. I was the lie 24 hours a day. So, cisgender, denoting or relating to a person whose sense of personal identity and gender corresponds with their birth sex. First of all, your birth sex is your gender. So there's the deception in that definition. They've tried to make them two separate things. It's ridiculous. Okay. So this is what they're teaching your children. You see this picture right here? It's a little girl in panties that says, I'm a boy. A little boy in briefs that says, I'm a girl. Cisgender, where your sex and gender are one. Your sex and your gender are one. Transgender is where your gender and your sex are two different things. That's impossible because transgender does not exist. Man, oh man. Listen, we're going to look at a, right now, we're going to look at a PowerPoint that some people have seen already. And not worry about that. But this is what they're teaching your children. This is what they're teaching your children in the public schools from elementary school on up. That gender is assigned by the doctors, not by God at conception. God doesn't have anything to do with your gender. That's what they're teaching. Why? Because they're trying to remove God. Yah. God is such a generic term because there's so many gods. Even God says in the scriptures, he says he is the God of gods. Paul up on Mars Hill saw all the gods that they worshiped. So God Almighty, the God of heaven, the one true living God, they want to do away with him. So they teach transsexual is a person who is transsexual has physically or hormonally transitioned to a gender other than the gender they were assigned at birth. Okay, listen up, pay attention. This is real simple. Nobody can transition into another gender. It is impossible. You can put makeup on a pig, but it doesn't change the fact that it's still a filthy old swine. Listen to me. I used to say I felt like a woman. That was impossible. Having never been a woman, I could not possibly know what a woman feels like. Pansexual. Now, I have to tell you, when I first saw pansexual, amusingly, I said to myself, oh, so they're attracted to pots and pans. Then when I saw this layout on one of their homosexual lobbyist websites, it said pansexual people are not attracted to pans because they know it's so ridiculous that people are going to automatically make a joke of it. So they say a person who is pansexual is attracted to people regardless of gender. You know what that sounds like to me? To me, that sounds like somebody who is so lost, who is so broken that they just want some attention, some intimacy with anybody who will give it to them. And that's what this is. It's the perfect example of someone that's in search of intimacy, no matter who they can get it from. So, gray asexual. A person who is gray asexual very rarely experiences sexual attraction to any gender. See, a person can desire intimacy and not sex because intimacy is not sex. Sex is not another level of intimacy, like I've heard some people say. It is not intimacy. Intimacy is intimacy, and sex is sex. Two total separate things. And thank God that they are, because each have their own purpose in meaning, even symbolically. Okay, so if they can make them believe that it's romantic, then it's going to be sexual. Polysexual. Yes, really. These are terms that they're teaching your children and your grandchildren, by the way. A person who is polysexual is attracted to more than two genders, but not all genders. Do you not see how these definitions do not even, how they completely contradict one another? How the next definition cancels out the former definition because none of them can possibly coincide with one another because they're all lies. So, just in the definition alone for polysexual, they're stating a fact that there's more than two genders, which we know that there's not. A polysexual person could, for instance, be attracted to people of all genders except for boys. Do you not see the ridiculousness of what everyone is allowing them to feed the children? Bisexual. Person who is bisexual is attracted to both the same gender as they identify and different gender or genders. This is the most common term that people who desire intimacy from anyone who will give it to them use. However, let me say something. Let me say this, y'all. Let me say this. There is no such thing as bisexual. None. If you are a man, a male, and men have penises, women have vaginas, no men have a vagina and no women have a penis. That's just nature, the law of nature. That's a fact. That's the truth. So if you're a man and you lay with another man, and it doesn't matter if one of them men think they could be, should be, would be, want to be, can pay to be, dress up as, identify as, or just feels like the opposite sex, he's still a man. You're guilty of the sin of homosexuality. If one of those same men goes and lays with a woman outside of wedlock, he's guilty of the sin of fornication and in some cases adultery. So guess what? There's no such thing as bisexual. Bisexual is another thing that the enemy has created to change the way we think. So when your grandson tries to break the ice that he's guilty of homosexuality and tells you that he's bisexual, tell him that there's no such thing as bisexuality. Say, no, you're not, because there's no such thing. You're guilty of a sin, and the sin is homosexuality. And if you're also sleeping with women, you're guilty of fornication. Pretty cut and dry, if you ask me. All right, I'm going to try to go back. So intersex, we already covered this. Everyone is born either male or female. Nobody is born neither. They try to say a person who is intersex was born as neither entirely male or female. And there's only a part truth in that. Is that if they're born with male and female genitalia, one of those genitals is not entirely complete. So demisexual. Now, until the day that I was looking on their website, I'd never even heard of this nonsense. A person who is demisexual only experiences sexual attraction once a strong emotional bond has been formed. Hmm, this is important. Why is this so important? Well, I'm going to tell you why this is so important. Because they're telling people that once you create a strong emotional bond, that it then must progress into an attraction. And if it's an attraction, it becomes romantic and or sexual. This is so important because they've come up with terms like bromance. Yeah, I had a young man last year that I was speaking to, and he told me how he loves his girlfriend, whom he has a child by. His best friend loves his wife, whom he has child by. But the two of them have created such a strong bond together, which is actually the intimacy that God intended each man to share one with another and women one with another. So that him and his friend have created such a bond that it could only be sexual. So they have a bromance and they mess around and they engage in sexual activity together. That's the deception, and that's how it begins. And this is why it's happening, because we've allowed we have allowed all of this to take place. We allow it in the school system. We allow it to be taught. And the excuse is, well, I got to work and pay the bills and can't pull my kids out of school and I can't homeschool them. And we can find a million excuses why we can't. Maybe we can find one excuse why we can. Hey, look, I'm out of here. I am really excited. Sunday morning, I'll be in Lima, Calvary Chapel of Lima, Sunday morning. And can't wait to see everybody there. And maybe even some of you will be there. So, Lord willing, I'll see y'all Monday morning. Maybe over the weekend, I'll pop in with a video here and there, updates. But who knows? We didn't cover all the definitions, and maybe we'll go into a few more definitions Monday. Maybe the Lord will move me somewhere else. Who knows? But y'all have a blessed weekend. Know that I love you all. Peace.